Now, the highly anticipated face-off between former Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba and his estranged wife Norma Mngoma at the Zondo Commission has been rescheduled to next Tuesday. The couple has been embroiled in a public domestic dispute which resulted in Mngoma being arrested by the Hawks late last year. Following the arrest, Mngoma did an interview with another news channel where she made several allegations about her husband's dealings with the infamous Gupta family, the very family that is arguably at the center of the Commission's existence. Gigaba has requested to cross-examine his wife. To discuss this further, we're now joined by advocate and director at the Mosima Legal, advocate Mosima Rasesemola. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. I suppose there's a lot of questions in this matter, especially when it comes to the estranged wife of the former cabinet minister, Norma Mngoma, and how then she is going to end up giving testimony at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. Did she submit to appear before the Commission, or was she perhaps summoned by the Commission after, speaking about very detailed information on the Guptas and her relationship with the Guptas, as well as Malusi Gigaba's relationship, pardon me. How did she end up being called to the Commission?
The official word, as some of us received it in the media, was that given the interview that she had in December last year, the Commission then took it upon themselves to invite her. And I think this is understandable given the fact that the Commission in and of itself is a truth-seeking forum. And so whatever news that is out there that sort of has an implication on the work that they're doing and the findings that they're trying to put together in the report, ultimately, they would want to incorporate that. And it's also understandable given the very public way in which she made her claims, and how then you couldn't have a parallel situation where on the one hand you have the Commission doing its work, whereas she's speaking issues in the public that are very incidental to the work that it is doing, particularly because, Mr. Malusi Gigaba was a prominent minister, and he had very, clear ties linking him, even outside of, Ms. Mngoma's claims. But what we saw happening in our courts with him being, even the public protector investigating him on possible violations of the Citizenship Act. So it is pretty understandable, but the official word was that the Commission ultimately then invited her to come and make her submissions, as they believed that whatever claims that she was making would be helpful to the report that they were trying to conduct or to put together as a commission.
Now, with that in mind, we know that Malusi Gigaba doesn't want Norma Mngoma's testimony made public. He's rather opted, to ensure that the information that she has to say is not heard by the public, or perhaps heard in private. Who will have this final say on whether Mngoma will definitely have it in public, or her testimony being muzzled or heard in private?
Ultimately, it's the chairperson, but I don't see it happening also. Again, the thing with the Commission is that they go out of their way to make sure that the proceedings are made public. Remember, it stems from a public protector's report, and these are issues that are very much clearly in the public interest. So there is no way. It would be very exceptional if she was allowed to give her testimony in public, and the reasons for that would have to be extremely exceptional, which I don't think they are. But ultimately, it is the chairperson who decides, because it's also a legal issue. So ultimately, it is him, and not so much administrative, and so it wouldn't be the secretary making the decision ultimately. It would be the chairperson.
You say that you don't think that the reasons to bar Mngoma from speaking and giving her testimony publicly are really that compelling. But looking at what Gigaba has said, he has spoken about how whatever his estranged wife will have to say will impact the dignity of their minor children. Also, trying to, make it seem like she doesn't have much to say because, the evidence that she will give is either speculative or fabricated. What do you make of that line of argument?
I mean, with regards to the impact to the dignity of the minor children, in my head, I'm wondering, is it because it is a former wife implicating the husband, or the wife implicating the husband, and the fact that all these issues and her ultimately coming out stems from the fact that it started off as a domestic situation, or does it have to do with, what she has to say and how the leaders of evidence will ultimately guide her in how they ask the questions, so that what they ask has more to do with, the issues that are central to what the commission is trying to investigate. I think we have already seen instances where certain names were mentioned in certain testimonies, and the implication thereof was that it was very damaging. But I think, the leaders of evidence will be very, clear in ensuring that whatever question they ask has to do with trying to tie everything to the core issues that have to do with irregularities and corruption in the public sector and in the state, and how it conducted its business. So even given that, I think there are still measures or ways of mitigating to ensure that the elements that have to do with how it could possibly damage the dignity of the family and the children will be kept out of the submissions.
Another reason that Gigaba has given is that Norma Mngoma is using the Zondo Commission to perhaps gain some form of leverage when it comes to their divorce settlements.
I mean, I really don't. I don't think that matters enough. When you weigh the fact that we really need to know, the public really needs to know, and the commission itself really needs to know, what possibly could be a link between his time in governance and, the so-called relationships that he has had with the Guptas. I think that weighs more than anything. I think people who raise the fact that there might be criminal, implications on their part, have a better, it's not even a defense, but it stands the test of time much more severely than merely saying that this is being used to try and gain leverage. I think Minister or former Minister Malusi Gigaba needs to have confidence to say that however, his divorce proceedings will go, the judicial officer and the legal representatives will be able to trim it down to the most important issues in trying to dismantle the marriage and ultimately dissolve it. And the implication will be that he will be heard from what will come out of the proceedings in the commission. I don't see how the implication will spill over into his divorce proceedings unless his legal representative is not that much clear on what and how he represents his clients. And in any case, the findings from the commission are not binding. They're not final decisions. We're merely having a public spectacle, and judges are always called to judge based on the facts of a case and not so much what is out there in the public.
The State Capture Commission of Inquiry is essentially centered around the Guptas and the impact that they had when it comes to state capture. When looking at what Norma Mngoma has said, in media interviews, she's spoken about a number of allegations that, from about 2009, when Malusi Gigaba was appointed Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, he had consulted advisors, which advisors had later emerged to be the Guptas to discuss work matters, and that he frequently met with the Guptas during his times as Minister of Public Enterprises, Home Affairs and Finance. Looking at that information, how much substance does it have, or will it have, in the work of the Commission and, the use and its value within helping the Commission?
I think it'll all boil down to the substance of the allegation. To merely say that, okay, so on the one hand, it'll be a question of whether really they were his advisors, right? And how you ultimately have that at the output is what kind of advice was offered and what was the implication, and implication as in what was at the output of the advice that was offered. So, for example, if them being his advisors had to do with pretty much them advising him on who to appoint where, then at the output we would have to have her testimony tie in with that, to say by implication that is what we had in the ultimate end, to say that that is how they advised him. But at the end of the day, it will also be a question of, how was this detrimental in the greater scheme? Like when you consider public affairs and the administration of public affairs, what implication did it have to the extent that this, is characteristic of state capture in and of itself? And I think we should all be interested in hearing how the cross-examination would then go. Because that is where the substance of her allegation will ultimately be dealt with, to say they advised him and what was the implication, what ultimately did we see come out in public administration with regards to how he ran his affairs. Because people might advise you, but I think if in the ultimate end that does not have an impact on how he makes his decision or how he made his decision as a government official, then it will be up to, the Commission to ultimately weigh the extent to which that constitutes or is an attribute of state capture, an element of state capture.
Could we find that perhaps what Norma Mngoma has had to say in those media interviews and the manner in which it will be used at the Commission, could we find that there may be a situation where she may open herself up to legal scrutiny as being perhaps one who benefited from whatever gifts and whatever interactions, translating into money, into the Gigaba household?
I think she has already, by implication of the interview. I was watching a snippet of that yesterday, and she would talk about bags of money and how we define organized crime or even corruption in this country, and generally the standard is that proceeds of corruption are also implicated in how you define it and how you sort of state that these were the proceeds and this is how they were used. So, I mean, I from a legal standpoint, I think she already has implicated herself. But remember, with the Commission, it's not so much about, criminal implication and things like that. We're looking at specific legislation that has to do with how members of the executive handle themselves or conduct themselves with public money and all of that. So we won't see that coming up. But, I mean, from just a reading of the interview that she conducted last year, she clearly has benefited substantially as a spouse of a person who received proceeds in what seemingly seems like a situation of corrupt dealing. So I think she already has. But she can always plead the fifth, and I trust and believe that her legal counsel will advise her, not plead the fifth, but exercise her right not to respond to any question that is put before her. So I trust that her legal representative will advise her accordingly.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time, Mosima Legal Director Advocate Mosima Rasesemola, giving us a sense of some of the expectations and the breakdown when it comes to the estranged wife of former Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba, Norma Mngoma, who is set to appear at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. Of course, that expected to happen on Tuesday.